Hello, I'm Dane. Welcome to another episode of Dax Jutsu. In today's episode, we will discuss a method and how to mask column values, except for the current login employee. For example, the current employee is George Clark. So George Clark should be able to see his own name and his own sales as well as the sales of the other salespersons, except that these names, employee names, are all masked. Now you can use low level security, but in this scenario, that won't be applicable because low level security limits limits the visible rows a user can see. So the user can only see its own data. So what do we do? I have already created another table. This table references employee or employee table. And we will be walking through this variables one by one. So this is what it does. First, it references the employee table, and this is the employee table. Now let me return that. So that's employee table. And there is a column that returned an error, but we'll fix that later. And then the next thing we do is we create a mass employee name column within this calculated table. And we do that by using add columns. So add columns requires a table that can be a variable, a table expression, or a physical table. So add a column to, or add columns, if we have more than one column to add, to TBL. And we call that mask employee name. And then, let me copy this. We rank salesperson ID. We create a rank column of salesperson IDs. Let's return this. Mm, Rank X, and the name should be added. Okay, so return mask. So that returns a rank column. Sending. And then we format that rank column as 000 show. It should append two zeros or 10 depending on the length of the number or the number of numbers or characters within a number. And then we add amp before that formatted value. So I'll delete that and and uncomment that line. So we now have our master point name. And next thing we want to do is to create a cross join of our original table with this mask. But we need to rename the columns within this mask table variable. So we cross join TBL with select columns of mask. So email within mask is renamed as email2, and mask employee name is as this. So we return that and then cross join. So cross join is now returned. So each employee line or record is joined with the other employee lines or records. And then we finalize our table. So From this question table, we rename some of the columns. So login user's name is the salesperson name. Login user's email is the email. And the email of other users is email to. And then we add another column. And we create a condition for that column. So email to mass employee name. So if email is equal to email to, we return the salesperson name, the actual salesperson name. Otherwise, we return the mass employee name. And then we return our final value. Okay. So what is the purpose of this mass employee name to? Let's open mass employee name to. So what this does is that what we want to happen is the currently logged in user's name should always be the first in the hierarchy. So we add an invisible or a know what space to the employee name. So the condition is if email address is equal to the login user's email, then return the employee name and then underscore. Or I mean Unicar 8203. Otherwise, employee name. Let's change this to login. Users users name. Okay. And then we go to our visual. First, we need to determine who the currently login user is. Now, if I were in the service, I would have used user principal name. But since we're just trying to mimic what happened in the service, I hard coded an email. So, for example, our currently login user is Fiona. We want to use this as our filter value. So let's minimize this a bit and then create a measure. Oops, before that. Okay. So we need to there are two approaches that's going to happen. First, we have a many-to-many approach and then a disconnected table. So with many-to-many, we create a relationship between our employee table and the mass employees. This is going to be like this, many-to-many, and we make sure that mass employees filters the employee table. Okay. And then we create a new measure. In this measure, we will be filtering the login user's email column by the currently login email. So let's create a measure called mass sales equals create a variable of the currently login user, current employee equals current current login email. And I'm wondering why intelligence not kicking in. So okay. And return calculate. So we calculate our sales measure, and we make sure that our mass employee login users or email is filtered by the current employee value. So let's duplicate this and let's change the fields. So mass sales, then mass employee name too. And we sort that by mass employee name too in ascending order. Sort axis ascending order. So if had we used mass employee name instead of mass employee name too, Fiona Wilson will be sorted somewhere after E. Sort access by mass employee name in ascending order. Mm, okay, so depends on what you want. You can use mass employee name 2 or mass employee name 1. But for this tutorial, I'll be using a name 2 version. Okay. So another approach, instead of using many to many, is to use a disconnected table. So a disconnected table is one that doesn't have a relationship to our fact table or the other dimensions table. So this will be quite a simple one. So a disconnected table rather will be just referencing our mass employees. So that's it, mass employees. And then of course we create another measure for our disconnected table approach. And I'll call this new measure mass sales disconnected. Create a variable for the current employee, current login email, and then create a filtered table of the emails, or I mean, we will be filtering email address based on the current login user's email. So users equals calculate table and values email disconnected others. If filters login user's email is equal to current employee. And this will create oops, a virtual calculated table containing just the email address which has been filtered down to the current employee based on the login user's email. It would look like this. So our current login user is Fiona. Login user's email, Fiona. And that will generate this value. So let's go back to that measure and we return our sales value filtered by users column. So calculate sales, give filters, treat as. Now we use treat as to propagate a virtual relationship. So there is no relationship between the disconnected mass employee table and the other table. So we use treat as. Treat as and then employee email. I'll duplicate this and I'll change this to mass employee name to sort axis, mass employee name to ascending, and replace the measure. Okay, so which method to use? It actually depends on your semantic model. You will find that mass employee name many to many is faster. You will also find that the disconnected approach is faster. So it depends. Now I have tested this in a very small table, and for that testing, the disconnected table approach was faster, but it might be different in your case. Okay, so I hope you've learned something. Thank you for staying with me and have a good one. Bye bye.